Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. Let's talk boxing. It's fight week as the day of reckoning quickly descends upon us. We're going to get into the technical elements of it in a couple of days. But first, I want us to talk about the psychological aspects of two of the stars of the show, Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder. Both of them have had bumps in the road on their heavyweight journey. So we're going to talk about where they're at currently from the perspective of their mindset. But before we start to delve deeply into that, I just want to point this out. After all of the DAZN interviews, this little image has been popping up right there. It looks rather suave. I like it. But it looks rather familiar, does it not? It looks exactly like this. DAZN. But listen, I want 10% of the royalties from everything that's made on the day of reckoning. I'd also like a six-figure salary job. Technical breakdowns. People will love that. Let me get on there with some technical breakdowns. But moving on from that, let's talk about the actual fighters. 4 months ago, I made a video where I was talking about Anthony Joshua. And I was saying that he might very well be the closest he's ever been to being the best version of himself. Now, at the time, many people were saying Anthony Joshua was done. He was washed mentally. He's just not that guy anymore. I respectfully disagreed because from a technical perspective, I actually think he's the best he's ever been. This idea of, just walk these guys down and start throwing big punches. It's easier to do that against lesser opposition, first and foremost. And secondly, he used to actually make quite a few technical errors. He'd lose position, he'd throw his right hand, and his right hand would come low after he's thrown it, which leaves you open to a counter left hook. So there were certain errors that AJ used to make. Now he's started to iron those out more and more. Now, I do agree that from a mental perspective, perhaps he wasn't as aggressive and gung-ho as he used to be. I'm not just talking about in-ring tactics. As I said, that's going to change with the harder opposition that you face. But even mentally, I think there was a consensus that he wasn't quite the same sort of guy. Having said that, of late, he's been showing that eye of the tiger again, has he not? Have you seen the way he's been looking at Dev Sani? He looks as though he's ready to either cannibalize Otto Wallin because he's in that Ted Bundy mindset, or you're about to see Dev Sani go missing and you're going to start seeing his face all over the milk cartons as they start to put appeals out there for a missing guy. So AJ looks like he's got that aggression going on at the moment. And I've been saying this way before he started getting angry with Dev. And for me, in my humble opinion, what is really triggering this is not just a dislike from Dev Sani, which I do think we can all agree is there. But I also actually think if you were to consider the psychological definition of stress, not the dictionary definition, but the way psychologists observe it, you are stressed according to your perceived inability to cope with a given obstacle. This is why it's about perception, not reality. And many people can get stressed about things that aren't the biggest of deals, but in their minds, they blow it up as it's this massive thing that's really difficult to overcome, right? With great consequences. Well, if you were to consider the couple of events that have taken place over the last few months, you saw Anthony Joshua get in the ring against Robert Helenius, a very big man whose dimensions are not too dissimilar from his own or from Tyson Fury's or from Deontay Wilder's. And he's got a very big right hand. And you know that Deontay Wilder's got a very big right hand. Now, I'm not suggesting Helenius is anywhere near as good as Deontay Wilder, but he's a poor man's version, so to speak, in some aspects of his game. So when AJ knows I have to avoid that big right hand against this big man, and I can then take him out with a single shot, suddenly that starts to give you some self-belief. In addition to that, he's seen Tyson Fury not look great against Francis Ngannou. And AJ himself has been saying bodybuilders are up against the dossers, and we'll come to that in a moment. But essentially what he's saying is, you were talking about me being a big stiff bodybuilder. A big stiff bodybuilder beat you, in my opinion. So if you consider the perceived inability to overcome a specific obstacle, let's say he sees Tyson Fury as a mountain. He himself is a rock climber and he needs to climb that. Prior to those two events, Tyson Fury might have been looking like a much more daunting mountain. And he was perhaps doubting his own rock climbing abilities. Well, now not only does that mountain look smaller, but he's starting to believe he can climb. And I think this is why we're starting to see AJ with this more aggressive mindset. He's starting to believe. In the past, I've made an analogy to say that what he's experienced is something akin to post-traumatic stress disorder, which you can understand how a fighter can experience something like that when he goes through what he went through against Andy Ruiz. And so it takes time to be able to put those demons and those ghosts to bed. If you look at the way he's been with the likes of Adi Oladipo, who he trusts and he feels comfortable around. Adi is obviously a gentleman. He's a very good interviewer, a very good presenter. But in addition to that, he's an AJ fan. So AJ doesn't feel as though he's trying to catch him out with what it is that he has to say and stuff like that. He can actually relax. He can have a laugh. So I know there's a lot of people out there that are disagreeing with me and they're saying, no, Chris, I don't think AJ's got his mindset back. To me, he looks like a wounded animal. The way that you would corner a cat and it would start hissing at you because he knows his time is near and he's just trying to act aggressively to try and get out of that situation. That's what AJ's doing right now. Even if he does come through Otto Wallin, he's not coming through Deontay Wilder, and he knows it. I don't agree with that. And apart from Adi Oladipo, you also see him with someone else he trusts in Laura Wood. And again, he's very, very comfortable, very relaxed. It was funny actually because Hatman compared this to a date and said that Laura Woods was acting like a giggly schoolgirl at times. And there were a few of you who also pointed out the fact that there were a couple of lines in there that were a little bit cringy. One of those lines is when Anthony Joshua was talking about fighting Francis Ngannou. And Laura Woods said that a fight between those two would be rough. And AJ said, battle of the bodybuilders. And Woods replied, oh, could you imagine? Wow. Can you imagine the pay-per-views on that? £700, thanks. Well, she, I don't think, was talking about the fight per se. And it certainly came across as somewhat flirty. So Anthony Joshua seemed to be in a comfort zone there. So you see that when he's relaxed with people, he feels okay. And the reason I don't think it's just about disliking Devzani or aggressive because he's nervous at the fact that he's around anybody that's associated with Wilder, Queensberry or Tyson Fury is because Sherry Abbasi, shout out to Sherry, he went out to Saudi Arabia. He's been interviewing a few people and he spoke to Anthony Joshua. And Anthony Joshua was very abrupt with him too. And I actually asked Sherry if he knows AJ, is there anything that's gone on in the past? And he said, no, I know AJ and he's usually cool. He just seems to be like that with everyone at the moment. So maybe it's a case of Sherry Abbasi, who is a fan of AJ, just isn't that close to AJ on a personal level. So he doesn't feel that level of comfort and trust. So for me, it's not really a case of him acting up because he wants to convey this idea that he's, still standing when deep down he believes that he's on the verge of being taken. I think that he's actually growing again in confidence. That's at least my take on it. Let me know what you think about that with regards to Anthony Joshua and where he's at. Well, having said all that, I also believe that Otto Wallin has played a blinder from a mental warfare perspective. Anthony Joshua, if you look at the nature of his operation over the last few years, he's been changing trainers quite consistently. He's gone from Robert McCracken to Angel Fernandez to Robert Garcia to Derek James, now to Ben Davison. In between that, he was also shopping around for a number of trainers in the United States. So he has been looking for the perfect match and he's been struggling to find it, it seems. Now, there are two possible explanations, in my opinion, as to why he will not stick with one specific trainer. Number one, he just hasn't found trainers that he rates. When I've started to work with these guys, I'm not convinced they're actually going to help me. Now, bear in mind also, after the first Alexander Usyk fight, AJ publicly put out a comment that was critical of Robert McCracken and the instructions he was getting in the corner for that fight. That's one of the reasons that the whole beef with Carl Froch started, because Froch, who really rates McCracken and is close with him, started to say, hold on a sec, you've got to take some accountability. And then he started to dig at AJ. The point is, AJ feels that perhaps a trainer needs to be able to know exactly when to guide them and how. The other potential explanation is that he does actually think these trainers are very good and have great bits of knowledge that they can pass on. But it's a finite amount of knowledge. There's a limitation as to how many nuggets they can give to him because he already knows a lot about boxing, right? He's an Olympic gold medalist, former unified heavyweight champ. So maybe he feels, I don't need that long with these guys to understand what it is that they teach. Then I can move on and absorb new information from somebody else. Whichever one of those two you consider, whichever way you cut it, you arrive at one conclusion. And that is that Anthony Joshua does not trust a specific trainer 100%. To be able to rate him so highly that he says, I don't need anybody else. This is the guy I'm sticking with. Now, why is that important? Because when Otto Wallin was asked about the fact that he's working with Ben Davison, who trained Tyson Fury when he beat Otto Wallin, Wallin said, I think it's good to remember that after the fight, Ben Davison was fired by Fury. So that's all I take from it. Fury also had a draw with Deontay Wilder, who got a new trainer, and he came back to knock Wilder out. So obviously Fury got better when he switched trainers. Now, this is being portrayed as a swipe at Ben Davison, as though this is just him having a dig. I don't actually think that's the case. I think this is a very smart way of telling Anthony Joshua, you're somebody that requires information. You require guidance. You're not really a heavyweight that changes off the cuff. Well, the guy that you think is this great tactician, because that's what he's renowned for, he's your key to victory, the guy you're pinning your hopes on. You, who cannot really trust a trainer 100%, is putting your trust in this guy when the other guy that he trained to face me was so bad against me that he actually got sacked and that he actually improved after he got rid of you and found another trainer. It's a very intelligent thing to do. Let me know what you think about that. In addition to that, Otto Wallin has also been telling Adi Oladipo that when he was in Sheffield, they have archives of old sparring sessions, and he was looking back at those sparring sessions that he had with Anthony Joshua. So he's basically been saying, I've been studying. I know where I went wrong in the past when we fought in the amateurs on a couple of occasions, and also when we've sparred and stuff like that. I see that. I know how to deal with you now. And in addition to that, you're actually vulnerable, he told TNT Sports. He told them AJ's not the guy he used to be. So if AJ does have doubts and Wallin is saying I'm improving, again, it's planting a seed of doubt. I think Otto Wallin has done a very, very good job in appearing to be completely indifferent to the increased aggression of Anthony Joshua. Now, how this fight turns out, we will tackle that in a technical breakdown tomorrow or the day after. That's not relevant. I'm talking about from a sheer psychological perspective. He's played a blinder, but I also think AJ's in a much better place. Let me know how you interpret those things. Whilst Anthony Joshua seems to be moving from a more doubtful mindset to a more aggressive mindset, you could argue that Deontay Wilder has actually gone the other way, and he's displaying a friendlier, perhaps more sensitive persona. A lot of people have been critical of Deontay Wilder for this. They were saying how, he was talking a lot of smack, and when he was finally face to face at the first presser for the Day of Reckoning, he had a completely different energy, wishing AJ the best and stuff like that. And it's not just this issue with Anthony Joshua. If you look at the face-off, for instance, with Joseph Parker, he was also very, very cordial. Where's the guy that used to talk about wanting a body on his CV? Is it because he's been humbled by Tyson Fury? Or is it something else? There was an interview that was printed in the Telegraph in the UK this week where Deontay Wilder has been speaking about taking ayahuasca. Now, ayahuasca is a type of leaf that is boiled, and it basically creates this mind-bending brew. And Deontay Wilder has been dabbling with that. Now, his exact quote was, "It's been one of the top things in my life, and I'm glad that I've experienced it. One of the best journeys to experience. It's been a beautiful thing for me. And if you ask my wife, she'll say that it's made me more sensitive." And she's probably right, but it's also made me happier as well. I find myself appreciating even the smallest of the smallest things. And not saying that I didn't before, but the appreciation level has increased. It has done some beautiful things for a lot of individuals where they brought affirmation to their life or some type of understanding of the path they are running in their life. I'm looking forward to doing it many, many more times. I'm actually looking forward to doing it after this fight as well. They made the medicine on site, the DMT, and it was just a beautiful experience. I highly recommend everyone to try it out. I really do. It really has helped me in my life. I'm one of the happiest people I know in life, and God is good. Now, here's what I want you to ask yourself here. Is Deontay Wilder mellowing, softening? He's only fought one round in the last 2 years. Has he lost his edge? Did what happened with Tyson Fury, along with some of the mind-altering effects of this particular brew, affected him and changed him as an individual? We also change with age. He's got a daughter who's suffering from a disability, and that's why he got into boxing. Well, he's now able to provide the life that he wanted to for her when he first got into boxing, financially speaking, of course. So has he met his goals? And has he lost that hunger? Has he lost that killer instinct? For me, personally, I would venture to suggest no. I can't say that he hasn't declined. He took a real beating at the hands of Tyson Fury, especially the last two. They were brutal fights, and these things do take their toll. So I'm not saying he's the same fighter. That remains to be seen. But from a psychological perspective, to me, he just comes across like an assassin. A guy who's very, very calm, and when he's going to have to switch it on, he's going to switch it on. After all, was he not very, I guess you could say, compassionate and practically loving to his good friend, Robert Helenius? He had no problem with cleaning his clock. Now, that's my take on Deontay Wilder. But again, the majority of people I'm seeing on my timeline seem to suggest they think he's softened. Let me know what you think about the mindset of AJ, of Deontay Wilder, of Otto Wallin, the sort of games that they've been playing out here. It's not about the way the fight's going to turn out, but rather where you think they are psychologically speaking. Thanks for watching, everyone. Please don't forget to hit a stiff jab on that like button, a right cross on that subscribe button, and an uppercut on that notifications button. And DAZN, remember, I want to cut. Take care and God bless.